Hi, everyone. Today I have the honor of talking to author Ellen Marie Wiseman, and her new book is called The Life She Was Given. Thank you so much for talking to me today, Ellen.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to.
Okay, so I have so much to say about your newest book, and I do not give spoilers, and because this book at every turn, I was shocked. So I was looking at every, I'm looking it up on Amazon and some of the interviews you've given to see how I'm going to talk about this without giving any spoilers away.
Right. Yeah, that wouldn't be good.
No, and I want everybody to read it like I did because it was just, I don't know how to explain it. Like first of all, I was listening to it. Excuse me, my fall allergies are kicking in today. Oh, my goodness. I've had a day with them. But anyway, so I was listening to it, and the narrator is Gardner, and she is amazing. She's so gifted at reading these books. And as I'm listening to it, I'm trying to, if I would have had the book, I would have been fast-forwarding through it as fast as I could. So I'm really happy that I didn't have the book. I'm really happy that I was listening to it.
Right.
Because I was I want to know more. I want to know more quicker. I want to know what's going on.
That's good.
So, anyway, I really want to talk to you, about the concept of this story.
Okay.
I am so sorry that I keep choking. I'm trying to find a drink that I have around here because I'm going to go down and get one. It's, I was fine until I started talking, and then it started getting to my throat. But anyway, because it was so different and I read a lot of books, and, I've read a lot of books where there are split narratives, okay, but not when I don't know I don't know how they're connected. I love that I didn't know how they were connected.
Uh-huh.
How did you, how did you, how did you come up with the concept for that? I mean, without us giving away, how they're connected, because I don't want to.
Right. Well, believe it or not, the concept started with the image of a camera found in an old mansion. And from there, I imagined a young girl in the attic, and I think that comes from my love of the book Flowers in the Attic from 100 years ago.
Wow.
I was always fascinated by, those heartbreaking stories about how people in the olden days, if their child had a mental or physical disability, they would, put them in this back room and kind of keep them out of the public eye. And so between that and the flowers in my love of the Flowers in the Attic book,
oh, my gosh. That's exactly what I was thinking as I was reading it, because I loved that as a kid, as a teenager. Right. I read, every one of those.
Yeah, me too. So, and from there, I had touched on a freak show in my third book, Coal River, and I kind of wanted to explore that world further because I find it really fascinating. And so that's how I came up with the idea of the main character, Lily, being sold after she's, 10 years old. She's been in the attic for 10 years, and then she's sold to the circus sideshow by her mother. So that's how I came up with the idea.
And that's, so at first I was wondering whether it was a true story or not, and
No.
Then, but it's not, correct?
No.
Okay.
Not
so,
that I know of.
Right. That would be a coincidence, right? But, after I'd read a couple of things, I was like, okay, so you actually, because I was thinking as I'm listening to it, I'm like, maybe this is true. Maybe this is really, it sounded so true, about something that could have happened, that I really was believing that's what, that was probably what happened. But that's why I was like, oh my gosh, she came up with this. It was, I wish I could express to everybody out there, how amazing a story this is. The way that it weaves back and forth. I was like, oh my God, this is so good. And, I didn't read any of your other books, but I am going to.
Oh, awesome. I appreciate that.
I am so intrigued by it. And the way you weave it, because I was like, wait, how do they know each other? Are they friends? Are they, I kept going, thinking to myself, like, how are they related? How are they, and it caught me totally off guard. Like, I didn't even see that coming. Didn't even see it coming. Yeah.
I did my job then, right?
You absolutely did your job. I mean, it was amazing. And I love the fact that the main character, Lily, okay, she has this connection with animals. And I kept waiting to see, like how that was going to play out. And of course we find out how it does play out. But I was really interested in knowing, like, how did you come up with that concept? Like, do you think that there are people that can communicate, or did you like really just come up with that on your own?
Well, I don't know if there are people like that. I would like to think that there are
me
people
too.
that
I want to believe that
connection with animals. Yeah, me too. I want to be able to do that. I'm a huge animal lover, and so I want to believe that is possible. So I gave that gift to Lily because I want to be able to do it myself, I guess. And I also wanted, to kind of make the connection between how she was treated and how animals are treated.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a big thing to me, because I always tell my grandkids and my kids, you can't be mad at animals for acting like animals, especially when we're the ones who put them in positions where they need to defend themselves. So I kind of
exactly.
want to, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that.
Add that in the story.
And I was telling my son, I have a dog, and I always talk to him, like a person, okay? Like I always, like
I have two dogs and I talk to mine too.
Yeah, and my son said, and he didn't know about this book, but it was really funny because I'd come in from grocery shopping and I was, I was talking to the dog. I was like, and how was your day? And I'm like talking, and he's like, why do you do that? I'm like, because I want to, because he wants me to talk to him. And he's like, how do you know he wants you to talk to him? I'm like, I think that they want us to talk to him. Right. And I was like, and then I was telling him about your book, and I was like, he's like, you think they really know? I'm like, I think they know they like the sound of your voice, and they like eye contact, and they like, getting down to their level and, paying attention because they love us so much.
That's right. We are their world.
Right. And I like how both and here's the thing is, like, both characters, it came very natural to, which we find out with Julia as the book goes. And she doesn't even realize how natural it comes to her, I guess.
Right.
She kind of finds that out as her story goes. Right. Okay. So anyway, like I said, I want to talk about it, but like, we can't talk about it too much.
Right. Well, you can say that Julie was on a horse farm, so there's horses involved too.
Right. Not just circus animals. Right.
Right. Yeah. So.
And you know what? As a child, I loved the circus and the zoos, and then as I got older, I started to really look at the animals and think, oh, they just don't look that happy. They still look that, and then I stopped going to zoos, But
it's kind of like I remember going to a little tiny circus in the Adirondacks one time, and they had this one elephant, and it was like this woman was doing tricks with her, and it's like I wanted to be that woman. It's so bad, but at the same time, I could just feel how sad that elephant was.
I'm really happy that you used the elephants too in the story.
Yeah.
I was really happy about that. Okay, so let's talk about your writing, since we can't talk a lot about the book. It's funny because I usually have this problem with writers that are thriller writers, because this is not a thriller per se, but it definitely has so many twists and turns in it that I don't want to give I want the readers out there to have the same sensation I did when I was reading it. And that's why I'm like, okay, so I wouldn't call this a thriller. It's not like that, but it definitely has so many surprises in it of how it goes that it's like, it keeps you wanting to, I have to tell you, when I was listening to it, I'm like carrying it around with me everywhere. I was listening in the grocery store. I'm listening. It was, like I'm doing my walks outside, listening to your book. I mean, like I said, the narrator, you're very blessed because she is a really good reader.
She is.
she's really, and she's good with the characters, and, you know, even if I didn't know, like if I went back to a chapter, I was like, I knew who she was doing. I knew what chapter it was, you know, like I knew which character she was doing. Yeah, she's amazing. And there's a lot of people out there that listen to Audible, so just so everybody knows, like it is definitely a great listen. So, you know, it's good for you too when they get somebody that can narrate like that too. It's good for your book, you know.
Definitely.
So let's talk about your writing. Okay, because I want to get this right. Did you go to college for creative writing, or you didn't?
No, I didn't, and
so.
I've never taken a creative writing course because I went to this tiny high school. There was like 20 people in my class, and they didn't offer anything like that.
I couldn't believe that. I read it somewhere, and then I kept trying to find where I read it, and I'm like, no way did she not go to a creative writing class.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you just start writing, you know, and your first book was published. The first book was called The Plum Tree, and that was published in 2012, and that won all kinds of awards. Now, was it the first book you really finished, or is it just the first book you published?
It's the first book I finished.
Wow.
I kind of I had started a few different novels because I just kind of wrote as a hobby when I was bringing up my kids, but then after they graduated and went off to college and stuff, I decided to get serious about it. And The Plum Tree was the one that I knew I had to write because it's based on my mother's experiences growing up in Germany during World War II. So there was a lot of family history and stuff that I wanted to get in there. So I just was really driven to write that book, and I think it took me between 4 and 6 years of research and writing and stuff, and I basically learned how to write a novel by writing that book.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I mean, that is pretty impressive. I have to tell you, you know, to have your first one, and I'm telling you, it won all kinds of awards, and, you know, I can't wait to read it. And then I saw that your second book comes out in 2013. So in a year, you wrote another book.
Yeah, I had 10 months to write that one.
And that one's called What She Left Behind.
Yes, and that one has done very, very well. It's won all sorts of things, too, and has so far been my biggest seller. And that's set at Willard State Asylum in New York. Okay.
Then that makes sense for a lot of the stuff that, yes, you know, I can see, you know, with the life she was given, too, you know. Yeah. And then, so then your third book comes out 2015 called Coal River. And I'm like, wow, this woman was on a roll, okay?
Well, when I sold the Plum Tree, it was for a 2-book deal.
Okay.
And so that's why I had to write What She Left Behind so fast.
Okay.
And luckily, I had that idea. That idea came to me when I read an article about the Willard State Asylum. When they shut it, they found 425 suitcases left in the attic, left behind by the patients who checked into the institution and never checked out. So I wanted to write about what it was like to find those suitcases, but I also wanted to write about what it might have been like to be a patient sent to an insane asylum against your will, which happened to a lot of women back in the day. And so I came up with that idea while I was working on the Plum Tree, luckily, so I had the idea already. So then after I turned in that one, then I signed another 2-book deal, and then that's when I wrote Coal River and The Life She Was Given.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah. When you go to, like you said, the Plum Tree took you, you know, a while to write. But as you're writing more, do you have a style, you know, when you're doing the research, because I can tell there's a lot of research in this book, okay, in order to get the feel that everybody can feel of being in the circus. I knew you had to do a lot of research. And then you, really outline, especially with this book, I mean, the main part about it was that as you're reading from both characters, is that as one's experiencing one thing, it's so related to the other person experiencing, you know, as Lily's going through one thing, Julie's going through another thing. And so I was like, she must have really outlined how, you know, how to make this work like this.
Yeah, I always outline because I have deadlines, so I need to have kind of a map to follow, because if I didn't outline, I could easily get lost and waste a lot of time. So I always outline, and I always know the ending before I start, and also I write, when I do these two, like the back and forth thing, I always write each character's story separately and then put them together and hope it makes sense.
Well, yeah, these definitely did. I mean, this, like I said, especially like the second half of the book, as everything's I was like, that's when I kept wanting, like, if I would have had the manual book, I would have been like reading the pages faster and faster. As a matter of fact, I sped her voice up faster to get to some of the places because I was like, I want to know what's happening. So,
That's funny.
Okay, so they don't really, do you ever get surprised, like in the middle? Does it ever like change up? Anything happen?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Most definitely. I mean, it's like the outline is there just to kind of give me a guide, and if it changes while I'm writing, and because the characters sometimes do things you don't expect them to do, and so sometimes when it changes while I'm writing, and I just follow that, however it goes, as long as I, have a pretty good idea how the ending is supposed to be.
Now I know you raised your two children before you started writing, correct?
Yeah, I used to just kind of write once in a while when I had time, just as a hobby.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And then see, that's kind of what is very inspiring to me and for other women, because I'm 52 and I raised 6 children, and now they're, I've got grandchildren, and the older kids are getting older. I've got 2 at home still, but they're in their teens, and it's kind of like, as women, we get to a place where we're like, what do we want to do? Like, we did that. And I'm finding more and more women like yourself that it's like, all right, well, you know what? I'm just going to start writing, or I'm just going to start doing this, or, it's kind of like your second life, because now you're a writer,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's absolutely that way.
And that's so inspiring to women, because I think that, I don't know, especially in our generation, like, we didn't, I always think about this because my mom had passed on a couple of years ago, and I'm like, she didn't tell me what I was supposed to do next. Like,
oh, yeah, right. I know. I have 3 grandchildren, too, so I do spend a lot of time with them and stuff, but you're right. It's because after you bring up your kids, it's kind of like, what do I do now? I mean, I was working part-time, but there wasn't any, thing very fulfilling, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. How many hours a day do you spend writing?
Usually when I first start a book, it's like 4 hours a day, and then like the last 6 months before a deadline, it can be just 10 to 12 hours a day.
Did you realize how much you were going to love this part, of your life, like, being able to, I mean, you're a best-selling author. I mean, did you even envision that could happen when, when you were raising your kids?
No. I mean, you daydream and think, oh, that would be cool. But when I was working on the Plum Tree, it took me like 2 years to find an agent to sell it and stuff like that. And I was just so determined to get that book published, but I never knew that it would turn into what it's turned into. I'm published in 18 countries now, and
wow.
Just signed another 2-book deal, so I'm working on my 5th novel now. So I never imagined it would turn into what it has turned into, no. And I'm from this tiny little town that doesn't even have a stoplight, so it's even,
And so is that what do you like doing it like that, like 2 books at a time, like to have a 2-book deal so you know what you're going to be doing for the next 2?
Well, when my agent sold my first book to Kensington, that's my publisher in New York, they usually do 2-book deals, so they've been so good to me, and so that's how they like to do it. It probably would be a little bit less stressful if it was 1 book at a time,
right?
Because you have a deadline for every book, and so when you sign a 2-book deal, you're signing up for 2 more deadlines,
Yeah. Yeah,
so,
I can't even imagine. Okay, so then now you're working on your 5th book, right?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell us anything about it?
Sure. It's set in Philadelphia in 1918 during the Spanish flu, which is the worst pandemic the world has ever known, and Philadelphia was one of the hardest hit cities. And one of the sections of Philadelphia that was hit the worst was where all the immigrants and everybody was living in the tenements and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it follows a young girl who lives in the tenements. Her father is off fighting because it was during World War I, and she has twin baby brothers, and it's her and her mother and the twin baby brothers. and her mother gets sick and dies, and she becomes determined to take care of her twin brothers until her father can return. And at the time, the city is like under quarantine. People are not leaving their houses. The schools and churches and everything are closed. It's just kind of like a nightmare. And so she doesn't dare leave her apartment, but they're very, very poor. So eventually she runs out of food, and she has to go find food, and she doesn't know what to do with her brothers. She wants to keep them safe, but so she puts them in a cubby in her parents' bedroom, and when she comes back, they're gone.
Oh my goodness, I cannot wait. And you know what's interesting is I'm calling you from Allentown, Pennsylvania. We're right above Philly. And I remember, this so vividly, my grandfather, when I was, younger, in my teens, he took me to a cemetery in the small town that I lived and showed me that he had 5 older sisters that he never met who all died from the Spanish flu. And I never met his mom. It would have been my great-grandmother. But it's like, how did she do that? How did she lose, And then she went on to have 3 sons who ended up living to adulthood. But, during that time, it's like that's what was happening. So I imagine them in my small town also they were hit pretty hard, by that flu. And, at the time I couldn't even grasp it. But I've heard more and more stories about our area and how the Spanish flu affected it. And so that's so interesting. If you have anything
to share with me, you can just email me it, okay?
I will. I will. I can think, I'm also on Ancestry.com, so if I can find anything, I will definitely look, because I've been doing a lot more research lately on that kind of, because I've been reading more about it. But, so it's really interesting to me that that's what your book is about, because, as I get older, I kind of appreciate it more,
Right, and some people don't even know that much about it, so. And that's one thing that I try to do. I try to hit on topics that maybe people don't know as much about. Like Coal River is about the Breaker Boys, which is about child labor in the coal mines, in Pennsylvania.
Right.
That was set in Pennsylvania too.
Right. And, your books are like, I wouldn't call them historical fiction, but they do have a historical background, because during the 1930s, and maybe, you through your research, I'm just kind of guessing that this is what I remember, is that the circuses were big, right? That was a big thing. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and the people that worked in the freak shows back then were kind of like the royalty of the circus, because they brought in most of the money, and it was a good way for the people that had some kind of disability or problems or different things to stand on their own 2 feet and support themselves instead of being put into institutions.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, so I'm seeing, because when I was, that's why I thought it was true, because what you do is you take that era and then you just go with it, so it does have like an historical fiction kind of theme to your books, and I love historical fiction. So anyway, I can't wait to read your other books. I mean, Ellen, I can't compliment you enough. Okay, you are an amazing writer, and I'm so thrilled that I got to know you and got to know your book, and it was a joy to read. It really was. And
thank you so much.
Yes, and I want to talk to you again. I want let me know when this book comes out, because I will be your number 1 fan. You can
awesome.
Let me know, and I'll get it right away, and we can talk again. Okay.
Okay, I appreciate this.
Okay, well, you have a great day, Ellen.
I appreciate all your kind words.
Oh, good.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Yep. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.